Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Jetzt kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von hinten an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. Today I'm joined by Joey and Pedro, and we're going to be breaking down the losses to both Holstein and Kiel, unexpected, and the loss to Leverkusen, a bit more expected. So how are you guys doing today?
Well, not doing very good, obviously, due to the recent result. I mean, I'm glad that recently me and Joey, I think we can say that now, right? Recently became the new site experts for BBB Buzz. Due to a few bureaucracy and getting used to the equipment and everything, we're going to start posting articles from today until the end of the year as this new journey. I'm really excited for that. But yeah, Borussia Dortmund hasn't been the best club to just write about, especially because it's more of criticism rather than just making compliments and being happy to talk about our football team. But at least something good happened today. João Fonseca, a Brazilian rising star in tennis, just won his first Grand Slam match against Rublev this morning. So I'm really excited for that. Hopefully we get a new star, a Brazilian star in a different sport. And yeah, just excited to talk about this just depressing week as a Borussia Dortmund fan.
Oh, good. I was just gonna say it is exciting to along with Pedro, be one of the new site experts for BVB Buzz, and I hope that our articles and upcoming content can be a little bit more inspiring than Borussia Dortmund's recent performances. So let's get into it.
Well, Joey, your prose is far more excellent than a current Nuri Sahin football team is at playing football. Not that that's saying much. I'm just saying you can speak a little more highly of yourself. But first, we wanted to honor Teddy De Beer. He's a club legend, won numerous trophies with the club as the first and second choice keeper, retiring in 2001 from the professional game before he became a goalkeeping coach with the club. And there was a great tifo to honor him at the game against Leverkusen. Unfortunately, not a performance worthy of honoring him. But let's get down into that 3-2 loss to Leverkusen. It happened very quickly, right away. So what do you guys kind of have to say about the match tactically? Obviously, the back line was the main point of discussion with, I believe it was Kabar at left back, the academy prospect, still just 18 years of age. So when we talk about him, I think we'll be fine in doing this, but Twitter needs to understand that this is a U19 player who's like clearly not ready for the first team, and there's other people at fault for him being in this situation. And then you have Lures and Ryerson at the center backs. Lures has been unimpressive to me in the third division. So, this was kind of an expected result.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess and just a disaster waiting to happen, to be honest. I remember I was talking to Brian and Jules in the preview episode for the Leverkusen match, and we're getting excited for the lineup because we're supposed to have all the guys in, and then the day after, all the disasters and all the news start to come in, and we realize, okay, we don't have a back line. So basically, that just ruined our expectations for this match, and I completely changed my whole perspective of this match. At least I got the result right. I had the 3-2, but I chose the other way around. I hopefully Dortmund would win by that scoreboard, but Leverkusen ended up being the winners for this one. But tactically speaking, and honestly, I think we need to talk about that because as much we can just give an excuse to Nuri Sahin for not having enough options to put in the back line and in the squad in general due to illnesses and injuries and etc. The tactics could have been better, and I think Leverkusen had the upper hand of the match since the first minute, and literally they scored in not even the first minute. I think the thing that impressed me the most was their formation. They started with a 4-4-2. They're pressing basically in a 3-2 system. They're basically blocking all the passing lanes for the center back, so they didn't press as high as they did in the first minute. And of course, that probably changed because they scored really early. But even so, that's what happened. They didn't press as much, and they gave the freedom for the center backs to start playing because they didn't put enough expectations on those guys that they could progress the ball by themselves and not depending on the other guys to help them. Of course, it's not their fault. Ryerson was out of position and he's not an expert in progressing the ball from those areas. Lurs, junior talent. So I think in that aspect, the Leverkusen really knew what to do, and especially knowing all the information they knew the guys were not going to play. And also, two other things that caught my attention tactically was like there's too much space in the mid blocks for their transitions to their goals, especially the second and the third goals happen in those scenarios. So we just gave those guys too much space. And a guy that really didn't brought my attention negatively was Maxi Bayer, which was not really his fault because, in my opinion, his out of possession position was a little bit confusing, honestly, because he was stuck in between the striker and midfielder role. So he had so much space to cover out of possession, and I couldn't understand. I mean, if I was him, I would be completely lost. I mean, should I cover this guy? Should I cover the other guy? There was always another body left in the midfield where Leverkusen could find a escape route to attack us. And so, in that scenario, Bayer specifically in our midfield left a lot of gaps. Those are the main tactical points, and I mean, nothing changed much in the second half, and that's a big problem because Sahim didn't do any any substitutions right away. Adeyemi needed to leave probably due to injury. That's probably why he didn't play against Kiel. And yeah, it's just confusing all the way around. I think we try to just force ourselves in their box rather than being organized and trying to structure an attack. I saw a formation at some point with matchup playing in the back three and then the pivot was Sabitzer. I mean, what are we doing? Like, how does that make sense? I think I spoke enough, but yeah, honestly, I think Shaheen can blame as much as the injuries and the sickness in the squad and not having enough bodies there. But the tactics could have been better, and that's my opinion on the matter.
Oh man, it's hard to follow that up, Pedro. That was an expert analysis, I think. I guess the couple points that I'll touch on or add to for that matter. You know, Nuri Sahin had, I mean, the whole squad had 3 weeks to prepare for this match, regardless of the illness that hit several players. And when we look at the system that was implemented, it's very possession heavy, but we're not creating that many chances. And there were very few big chances in this match. And again, looking at the possession, it's over 70% possession against the defending champions of the Bundesliga. And what are we doing with it when we're down 0-2 after 9 minutes and conceding a goal 25 seconds in when I believe we started with the ball? So that's a problem in itself there. And then I suppose I'll touch a little bit on like Lurs and Kabar, who I'm going to avoid criticizing too much because they're clearly not ready for this level of play. And we've heard, the different members of Dortmund's hierarchy, whether it's Vatska or whether it's Shaheen, say that these are the youth players who are ready to step up, who are ready to be part of the first team. And that's okay. But these are guys who should be supplementing the first team. These are not guys who are ready to be relied upon. And when we put them in the starting 11 against a side like Leverkusen, starting, not even as substitutes, we're again in a situation where we're setting them up to fail. And I think this once again highlights the lack of depth that we have in the defensive line. So really hope that we're able to bring somebody in soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the Leverkusen match because the Leverkusen match wasn't lost during the 90 minutes. The Leverkusen match was lost during the summer when Shaheen insisted on a small squad, said he didn't want Tom Rotha, he didn't want Sumela Koulibaly. Like, Tom Rotha, I do believe in, even though he played absolutely terribly at the weekend. Sumela Koulibaly, I'm not a big believer in, but when you're talking about a fourth center back, Sumela Koulibaly has like 1,000 Champions League minutes, French youth international, like played a full season as a starter for a top Belgian side last year and plays fairly regularly in League One for France. Like, he's a fourth center back. He is far and away better than if you look at the fourth center back at like most top clubs that aren't this new Pep inspired eight center back line. Like, he's serviceable as a fourth center back. He was sent out on loan. His wages aren't even enough for it to really be worth it unless we're receiving like a substantial loan fee, which I don't believe we are. Tom Roth a 5 million fee. Like, yes, even if these players are hurt at the moment, they still would have covered minutes that players who are hurt for us would have played. And like, sending these guys out is why we lost this game. And then the other reason we lost this game is again down to personnel, and it's about how we use the personnel we did have. And Anton comes back from an injury, is back way too soon, whether it's the medical staff saying he's fully fit or Shaheen ignoring the medical staff and saying, like, yeah, there's a high risk, but I need Anton to play. And this type of decision gets Anton injured. And he does the same thing the week before, I believe it was, with Nicolas Sula. And now we're seeing Nico Schlotterbeck, who looked to be injured following that Barcelona match, plays the full 90 at the weekend following that. So Shaheen can go into the winter break with his one away win. And then Nicolas Schlotterbeck is all of a sudden not fit in the return match against Leverkusen, and that doesn't look full speed when it comes to playing Holstein Kiel. So that's where this match was lost. This match wasn't lost on the pitch. Nuri Sahin said of this, and I'm just going to continue my rant because I can't stop it at this point. He said, I can blame some players. I would have expected 10% more from some of them today, especially in this constellation. Leverkusen was beatable today. No, Leverkusen chose to look beatable today because they saw your back line. They said, Florian Wirtz, we can rest him. Dortmund's not a serious side. They rested Florian Wirtz. Like, could you expect 10% more? Like, yes, I would 100% expect Gregor Kobel to make that first save. But were Leverkusen beatable? No, Leverkusen chose to look beatable because they scored whenever they felt like it. Like, they decided to attack in the first 15 minutes, and they took their foot off the gas. This match could have been 10-0 if Leverkusen wanted it to, but Leverkusen didn't feel like it. So they decided they could look beatable. They let you play with the ball for however long it was, 76% possession. Like, if Leverkusen had wanted anything more from this game, they could have just taken it very easily. And you saw that at the beginning of the second half when they create that massive chance for Patrick Schick. And after about like 5 minutes, they turned it off. They went back into their shell, and they didn't really attack again because they didn't need to. They didn't really feel like it. But like, at any point, like, this match could have just gotten worse for us. And to me, like, the issue with that quote isn't that Nuri Sahin's necessarily saying like the players could have been 10% better because, like, cool, whatever. But it's the notion around it that Leverkusen were beatable and that this match like ever had a semblance of anything for Dortmund, because saying that just shows you don't understand like the way the match played out. Because this was not a beatable Leverkusen for a Borussia Dortmund side. It didn't even look that way when we scored our two goals. Like, the two goals we scored, like, it's an excellent finish from Jamie Gittins yet again. And you can say that every single match this season. How, like, if Jamie Gittins doesn't score every shot he has this season, like, where is Dortmund? 16th? Like, I don't know, because like, there's serious questions to be asked. Because we're not creating big opportunities. We're not putting away big chances. Instead, it's just a lot of shots from distance. And, like, yeah, cool, in these two matches, we've scored 4 goals. But we've never looked capable of dominating a match. When we have this much of the ball, it just makes us look very boring because we can't create these chances. We continuously score these excellent goals from outside the box or from the edge of the area, but there's not a sustainable way to be the side that scores 4 goals. Whereas for Holstein Kiel today, 5 big chances created. That's an easy way to score 4 goals.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I think it's a completely misread by Nuri Sahin in terms of analyzing a match because for me, it's not that Leverkusen wasn't beatable, in my opinion. And I agree. It's that they did not need to do much to beat us on that day. And that's what infuriates me the most because when you say things like that and you watch the match and you analyze it and you see the nuances, even with the guys injured and the guys out of for this game, and needs to be fair for the analysis because it influenced on the game. But I mean, honestly, I think I would have gone with a different game plan, knowing that I didn't have my two starting center backs and or center backs were functional enough to have the possession and start playing from the back. I would just start going long and having Bayer and Girassi finding us those score, like just escorting us to the goal and finding those second balls. I think that would be the approach for this match, and a good manager would adapt to the different circumstances, even though they're bad and as bad as they look. And Sahin didn't do that. And
Pedro,
I mean,
did
all
you
the
did you see Bayer or Adeyemi get the ball in the I almost sorry, I'm trying not to curse, but did you see either of them get the ball in a channel one time? I'm trying to remember. I
no,
don't
never.
recall.
Not
I
in a
mean,
good
Adeyemi
way.
had to do most of the work by himself. And yeah, that was a little bit frustrating. And even the goals, they were a little bit had a touch of luck. I mean, the first goal was a good combination 1-2 when Young Koto there has a little deflection on his cross, and by luck, Jamie Gittens was there with a great finish. I thought he was not gonna make it, but Jamie Gittens is such a incredible talent. And the second goal, yeah, of course, the penalty, in my opinion, wasn't a penalty. I even tweeted about that, saying that the
I'd
ref totally
agree.
put us back in the match.
Like
I
it's just teasing us. Like I don't need to watch challengers. Like it's just it was never real. It was
It,
never real.
if
Zendaya was
this
never into me.
if this was a match that Nuri Sahin thought Leverkusen looked beatable in, then he must have also thought that Dortmund looked like a squad that was going to put five past them. And that's just not the case. I mean, we all watched this match, and it was more or less atrocious. So to me, that this quote is just kind of more of the same, and sort of trying to avert the blame and make excuses when I think we really need to see a little bit more responsibility taken, so that the problems can actually be addressed in a productive way, which they were not before Holstein Kiel.
Okay, so we've kind of already gotten into a little bit, but do you want to talk about some of the issues you saw today at Holstein Kiel? Or let me first start it off before Pedro gives the more in-depth tactical analysis, because I'll just start you off like reading at a third grade level before Pedro takes over to give the harder stuff. But basically, it's the same thing. It's a 4-1-4-1 essentially, where Gurassi's up top. You have two guys in like the 10 space, sometimes running in behind, but not really, because we don't do that because we have to play possession football and make the game very easy for Kiel, so we can stay in front of them. And what that essentially did with Brandt and Sabitzer is they're both so easy to mark. They are like standing around, not in the hole. They're just next to like the center backs when they go there, like the two banks of four that are kind of getting very close to each other, or like the midfield and the defense are getting very close to each other in that deep block. Sabitzer and Brandt are not buzzing around; they're right there, which is leaving us in this precarious position when we turn the ball over in midfield, where only Nemecha is able to assist. Occasionally, you have Brandt and Sabitzer dropping in, but like neither of them are particularly good in possession. Brandt is a bit better in like the midfield phase of possession, but he's really struggled throughout his time in our defensive third because of just the style of play and the way he turns the ball over is just a little too risky to do in your own third, but he's not really been asked to do that until the last 2 years. So Brandt is just kind of gives the ball away for that first goal, and then it pretty much gets away from us there. It's the same goal that Patrick Schick scored twice, could have scored three times against us against Leverkusen, and then like that same goal happens yet again for Harris, and yet again when Harris tees up the other player for Kiel who scores like the third, whatever it is. But Pedro, do you have a bit more advanced of a breakdown?
I have actually because I paid a lot of attention in the tactics of this match, and honestly, as much as you guys know that I'm a Spurs fan, and sometimes I talk about them too much in this podcast, which is not even related with Borussia Dortmund. But today, I think I have to talk about them because honestly, I felt like this tactical setup against Kiel was very similar to a Ange Ball-esque system. Because
Mm.
what's Ange Ball? Basically, two center backs in a two line, and then both fullbacks inverting in the middle with the one pivot which was in Macha and both Ben Sebaini and Ryerson. And then two eights close to Girassi, and then the flankers way wide, just expanding the field. And even though I think it's an interesting approach, and I thought it was interesting in the beginning because we seem like we're controlling the match a lot, but even though we're not finishing or the chances are not creating the end product, and in my opinion was mainly because I don't really trust Ben Sebaini and Ryerson to be those inverted fullbacks in possession to just drift around the midfield and open those spaces and find those eights behind the center forward in positions to put the attackers in the one-on-ones. And even that, we relied way too much on Jimmy Gittens and Duranville just putting them on the flanks, and sometimes they have to dribble one or two guys before hitting the byline and not having enough guys in there to finish the play. So I think that's the main idea of the Ange Ball, which didn't work offensively, and defensively we are really exposed, especially putting too many gaps. And again, in terms of personnel, like when I saw that formation and I saw the way we were playing, like in Spurs, like you have Mickey Van de Ven, the fastest dude in the Premier League to cover for you if you have the counterattacks with those smaller teams in the Prem. But in Dortmund, we had freaking Emre Can being there, and I was wondering, oh my God, what would happen if we have a counterattack and Emre Can needed to cover like a huge amount of space, and that's exactly what happened. Like Everton couldn't cover. We didn't have enough bodies there to help ourselves in those counterattacks, and we were exposed. And also, individual mistakes didn't help. Brandt in the first goal, even though we had control, Brandt with that mistake, basically, he didn't kill us, but put us in the bad position and we lost momentum. And then Holstein Kiel took the opportunity and just steamrolled us in the first half. And I think that's the main idea of that tactic. And in the second half, basically, he tried like a 3-1-6, just putting a three center back system and putting all the guys in front. But there was no cohesion in the way those guys were moving. Like, seems like they were a little bit lost. They didn't know where to be placed on the pitch. Like, they had freedom, but they didn't know where to go. So
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
confusing to me. It's
Bef-
just like not structured.
yeah, even before that goal, like you could point at like there was a time where like one of the first chances we conceded of the game, Julian Ryerson's inverting into midfield a little bit. He's a little too slow to be there. There's no pressure on the ball in midfield. Uh, Emre Can pops up to one player, which he's repeatedly done. The space opens up behind him, and because Ryerson's come in field, that space is vacated. They run in behind Shan, and they're in on goal. And we got away with it. And at that point, I was like, Koble made his first save. Maybe like we'll finally see him play to his form of last year. This didn't end up being that game. And then later with like the three center backs, like yeah, like that kind of fixed some of our issues in build up because you could hide Emre Can a little bit. But then we had separate issues where our wingers were essentially even easier to focus in on because of just the way they were getting shunted out wide, and they were able to sit a little bit deeper and get those numbers behind the ball, and that allowed them to be closer to our wingers when they were receiving the ball in possession. And we've seen this all year from Nuri Sahin Ball. Like he's talked about trying to get the ball into the wings faster against Madrid, and a lot of his attacking play comes down to his wingers beating their man and then getting a cross in rather than like better intricate build up play. And a lot of the time when this happens and the other team knows that your only way of creating chances is getting your wingers to beat people, you just focus in on the wingers. And you saw that today where like in the first half, there's that one tackle on Gittins that's probably a yellow card foul most days. And when that doesn't get given as a yellow card, it just, as a Dortmund fan, you're like, ugh, because you really need that to be able to reliably create chances because you need their player to really have that in the back of their mind. Or Jamie Gittins isn't going to have as easy of a time, and then you're just not going to see like any consistent quality of chances get created. And also, like we're going to talk about it later, but like some of the stuff from like the central midfielders is embarrassing today against a club at the level of Kiel. No offense to them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to touch on something that you said, Eli, about the build-up play, or I suppose lack thereof. I think that both of these losses now have been a bit padded by the individual quality in this squad. We have, I mean, Gio Reyna scored a pair of really precise strikes. And Jamie Gittins scored a very typical Jamie Gittins goal. And then, Girassi is going to convert the penalty against Leverkusen. Um, but it's individual quality that's finding the net here. It's Jamie Gittins having take on after take on, and then eventually he's going to break through and he's going to score the goal. Um, but these aren't chances that are created. These are not like exciting team goals. So I think in some ways, like I said, these results have been padded by that individual quality. And I mean, this is Borussia Dortmund. We're always going to have individual quality in the squad. But as you've both pointed to, the cohesion between the players, between the runs, and especially in the I say especially in the build-up play, but the defense has been pretty terrible in communication too. So, I mean, there are problems galore right now.
Yeah, and to that point, like we did see in this, like in the match against Leverkusen, Leverkusen's a much better team, so it's harder to break down their defense in central areas, especially compared to a team like Kiel, who are terrible defensively. But in against Kiel, you at least saw like there were two moments in the first like 35-ish minutes where I think one was in the Mecha tried to play a little through ball in behind, and Brandt tried to play. Neither came off, and like they just stopped after that, and that just makes you so easy to play against when you know that Borussia Dortmund aren't going to try and play through the center of the park and create chances from those central areas. And then like, did Marcel Sabitzer even play today? Like, did he come deep to get the ball between the center backs once? Cool. I don't care. Emre Can can do that. Um, did he do anything else? Did he do anything in the middle third? No. No, not in possession. And if you go back to the Leverkusen match, like, yeah, Felix Lemaitre had 11 progressive passes. They're all literally just him receiving the ball in the midfield, where he was being allowed to receive it in the deeper part of the midfield, and then he's spraying it out wide to the fullbacks. They're not incisive. They're not too, like, maybe like the central ones are Garassi dropping in where they no longer care about him. Like there's nothing coming off the back of that. And when Garassi's dropping into that like uh number 10 position to receive the ball, there's no one for him to quickly lay it off to and then make that run in behind. And like despite us having on that in that game Maxi Bayer and Karim Adeyemi on the pitch, there's not the idea that when Garassi drops into midfield, receives the ball, lays it off quickly. Like the layoff quickly doesn't happen. We don't even get to the next stage where after the quick layoff, the ball goes in behind to two of the best guys at running in behind. Like there's no ideas to the build-up play, and this gets into like in the first half against Kiel when we're playing that back four and we can't progress the ball through our right side. Um, it makes it so hard for Jamie Gittins to do his 1v1s because it's not going to the right wing. And you don't get to see the best of Duranville. And when Duranville gets the ball, he's very bright. He hasn't shown the end product yet, but he's so young. He's so good on the ball, but he's not getting the opportunity because at right center back, it's Emre Can, and at right back, it's Julian Ryerson. But we've talked enough about the tactics. Let's get into the kind of gut reaction of like what response did you want to see while you were watching this match? Because I know I called for a 30th minute substitution. Am I unhinged there? I don't know.
I mean, I think I think that's reasonable. Things went completely awry in that match, and I mean, it's hard because before the first goal, there were periods of sustained pressure that Dortmund was putting on Kiel, but as soon as they broke through with that first goal, it was like any kind of attempt at a tactical setup that there was just thrown out the window. Um, we needed to see a reaction. I think not just in personnel change, but in a system change. And we did see that a bit in the second half with the substitutions because I think it was Rierson and Bensebaini both came on or both came off, and it was Bayer in as an attacking option, and Anton subbed in if I'm not mistaken. Um, so we saw a bit of that, but what was most lacking to me was the urgency. This is a squad that by all means should be able to get past Holstein Kiel with some ease. And being down 0-3 at halftime, we have to see an immediate response. Two goals in quick succession as a comeback is nice. It helps build some momentum. But when that happens in the 71st and 77th minute, there's just not enough time to really secure a full comeback, especially when you know that a team like Kiel, or any team for that matter, is going to start, leaning into the time wasting pretty heavily, which we saw, and that continued to break up any momentum that Dortmund started to have. But if those two goals had come in, say, the 49th and the 56th minute, then we're talking about a different story because there would still have been so much time, that it would have been hard for Holstein Kiel to waste too much time without like repercussions via yellow cards. So I really would have liked to see a stronger response at the beginning of the second half, and I just felt like the urgency wasn't there. And that's sort of a recurring theme that I've felt throughout this season is, where is the urgency?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Joey. And I also think that, I mean, Hostakil, since the beginning of the match, even though we had control, I think was a little bit of an illusion, especially because we are not being effective. And Hostakil in that formation with that much spacing behind the center backs, I always thought that we were in danger, and especially in those counterattacks, and especially if someone would lose the ball like Brunt did in the first goal. So yeah, I think it's more also into the choices, because as we're saying, like in terms of personnel, we have better options in this match, and but I mean, do you have the personnel to do that kind of game you wanted to do in this 2-3-5, like inverting both of your fullbacks and not leaving any type of cover for your center backs who are not experts, so especially Emre Can, not expert in covering that much amount of space. So that's on him as well. And I mean, the choice is like, he has interesting concepts, but I mean, you have to be more than that to be a manager, a head coach in football. You have to know how to adapt to different circumstances. He didn't do that against Leverkusen. He chose an interesting setup, but for the wrong match probably, and for especially with the wrong pieces. For instance, I would trust Young Koto way more than Ryerson to be that inverted fullback in possession, to find those pocket of spaces and try to find the passes to break the lines. But he didn't do that. He's still stuck with Ryerson and Bensebaini, who is also not really good in possession as well. So yeah, I think it's all the choices are really confusing, and it's just like, and even the goals that we scored, it's just like it seemed like it was accidental. Like we're scoring by accident. Like we didn't have the intent to score. Like we had the individualities who managed to find the spaces, and they scored the goals to manage to keep us in the match, because we have the squad quality to beat Hostel Kiel. We all know that, but I mean, when the problem is not the players, I mean, the problem is probably somewhere else. And I'm not saying that I'm signing him out or I'm just trashing him all along, like
Oh,
saying
I am.
he's not good. Yeah, yeah. That we don't. Just by the Twitter activity in this past afternoon, I think we're pretty sure of that.
Some of that
But
is bait.
yeah, but I don't know. I'm not saying him out necessarily, but yeah, I'm starting to run out of excuses or like saying like, oh no, he has good concepts, but okay, but can you put them, take them from paper, them in real life, like? And we are halfway through the season, 2025. We haven't won a match yet. Yeah, it's kind of getting hard to defend, and the next match, oof, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, if you take out the shots that we had that were blocked, we got outshot by Holstein Kiel. That's
Which is
unacceptable.
embarrassing.
That's a sackable offense. That's a fireable offense. And like to this point, we haven't seen some of the quotes. I think he was delayed talking to media. I don't know if he's got to talk to
I
Vatska,
think
if
that
he's
was on
got to.
purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Absolutely.
delayed. He's delayed because he's arguing for his job. But that again gets back to the point where, like, I literally called in the script of what was going to happen after this game during one of my tweets where I said, as soon as this game, I was like, I didn't say word for word because it's Twitter, it's a shortened version, but I was like, after this game, we're going to hear reports that Nuri Shaheen's job is unquestionable and they're going to back him, rinse, repeat. And that's what happened because that's what happens when you have a nepotistic cabal running a club instead of doing it in like a modern manner where you have a sporting director that does sporting director things and the coach when he hears about a transfer it's okay cool like thank you I appreciate the new player I will utilize them to the best of my ability but no it like that doesn't happen there's no consequences and that again goes into the point of like, why are you not subbing off Marcel Sabitzer in the 30th minute? Because you put him in there instead of Maxi Bayer to get more control. It didn't work. There is no more control in this match than there was against Leverkusen. Um, you can talk about control of the ball. Like, yes, we controlled the ball. We did not control the ball into the areas we wanted to. We didn't control the ball into like areas where you can create big chances from. We controlled the balls into a deflected goal from like around 18 yards and then like a goal that is very well taken. Gio Reyna, worldies only, but this is also a goal that like the goalkeeper didn't really see. It goes through a sea of legs and then it finds its way into the bottom corner, and that's excellent for Gio Reyna. That's nothing to do with Nuri Sahin. And when we go into the dominance of this match, in the first half it wasn't there, and in the second half it was only there because of the game state and because Holstein Kiel literally had a 3-goal lead where unless you're I don't know, Thomas Tuchel playing against Schalke, you're not going to fumble a 3-goal lead because it's really easy to do. So to me, it's the same thing over and over again. And like one of the issues is again, like the quotes just go to show a lack of understanding of like why certain things are happening in a game. And if you look at the tactical changes he's made, like there are cool ideas behind them. But then if you look at why he's sticking to a tactical change, um, it's completely disconnected for the way the games are playing out. So we played a 4-1-4-1 that worked against I think it was like Hoffenheim at home or it was the first away match we won, so Hoffenheim away maybe. But like in that match, he goes to the 4-1-4-1. We have two center backs that can play a bit more with the ball. We have, I believe it was Koto starting at right back, who's better on the ball than Ryerson. You have Benzabaini at left back, and you have Maxi Bayer like able to stretch the back line, and I haven't seen it since Maxi Bayer stretching the back line. I haven't seen like Brandt effectively dropping into midfield because Brandt can effectively play as an 8 consistently. He can do it at times. He did it in the Champions League run last year. Like he's not terrible, but he's not going to be able to give you consistent performances in 8. And this kind of gets into the issue I think a lot of people have with Brandt, where he's just not at the level of the guys in the clubs around us, where you have Xavi Simons, you have Florian Wirtz, you have Jamal Musiala, and then you have Julian Brandt. Julian Brandt is nowhere near the level of those players, and I think he gets overly criticized for being just good and not great, and he needs too much support around him. Whereas a lot of those guys are zone movers and they're able to help you out a lot more in build-up. Julian Brandt can't do that, and Marcel Sabitzer can't do much of anything this season. I think he's better than he's shown, and I think that the club has kind of gotten to the point where we need to move on like 3 or 4 of the guys from our midfield roles. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's complicated to discuss. I wouldn't get rid of Brand because I really think he can work in our midfield. But as you said, he's not a Jamal Musiala, he's not a Florian Wirtz, he's not gonna win the games for us in the same way those guys do. But I think still can be a really useful piece if he's within a structure. But that's the problem with Borussia Dortmund. We don't have conviction in what we do. Like as were saying, we have good ideas, but I mean, I think Saim is just running out of ideas because I think he used every trick in the book, like every single formation, every single idea of tactical formation he used this season. But I mean, and I'm not against that. Like, if you know how to use them and when to use them, I'm okay with that. And especially if you bring results, great. But that has not been happening in either sense. Like, the team is not developing as a collective unit and the guys seem just confused on the pitch. Like as we saw in the second half against Hostel Kiel, like it seems like they didn't know what to do. They were just basically carrying the ball, trying to find a space, and then solve everything by themselves. So it's really that lack of conviction that really irritates me on that matter. But I wouldn't get rid of the whole midfield. I think Sabitzer would be a piece that I'll probably look into move out of the club, especially because of his age and maybe his if we want to play a possession base either with Sahin or other manager, I don't think he's an ideal piece for that. And for that, I think we need another 8. We have some rumors, but still not convinced the model of just loaning out Chelsea academy players or Chelsea under 21 guys and just giving them back the season after. That's the best approach. We need a guy who really is going to stick there for us for a while. But yeah, Brent, I still think there's a place in Dortmund for him. It's just like we need that conviction that we as a unit can play together because we have those guys who can finish the games for us. We have the AM, you have James Gittins, we have Giversion at his best of his shape. But I mean, there's no conviction and there's no clear path that we are following. Like at least I can see one.
Yeah,
I
and
wouldn't get rid of
Joey,
Brandt
my question for
either.
you will be, so last year I talked about Julian Brandt playing quite literally every minute of every game. I think he finished with around 3,400 minutes in all competitions. Do you think that that kind of fatigue and that wear and tear has negatively affected him this season?
Oh, for sure. I mean, any player who's expected to play an obscene number of minutes, it is going to affect whether they are a young 22-year-old prodigy or they're a 28-year-old well-established player. So I mean, I do think there could be an aspect of fatigue in there, but I think the bigger issue is kind of what Pedro touched on with, players just not entirely understanding their roles on the pitch. I feel like we have so many players in the squad right now who have been underperforming or who've been performing at a level that is much lower than what we have seen them last season or the season before. Um, you know, it, and kind of like Pedro said, Shaheen keeps trying things, and I think he keeps trying new things, and I respect the effort on that part. I can respect that he's coming into multiple matches with different strategies. When something doesn't work, he does try to change it, but I'm also starting to feel like he's kind of guessing a little bit, and I'm certainly losing confidence in how he's able to set his players up tactically. Um, yes, Marcel Sabitzer has been terrible this season, and he's a player that I rate pretty highly. Um, I don't know if I would necessarily write him off just yet. If he doesn't improve that by the end of the season, then sure. But I also feel like him, just like Brandt, is in a position where it's like we don't know what to do with them. And Brandt does play better when the players around him are playing well, and when he has consistent runs back and forth, whether that's wing play or up through the center. But I think the lack of consistency in some of the systems that Shaheen is trying is hurting Brandt more than anything else. I mean, he's a playmaker, and when the strategy of trying to make chances is constantly changing or changing multiple times in every match, I think he is just a bit lost out there. He gets the ball and he's trying to get it off to another player, but the players aren't making the runs that he wants them to make or expects them to make, and then he ends up being on the ball a little too long, and that's when we see him lose the ball. And I think we've seen this happen more than just the match against Kiel with the play that led to the first goal. I think we've seen that throughout the first half of the season too, where Brandt looks a little bit too confused, and then he's dispossessed in a position where, Julian Brandt of last season or the season before would have gotten that ball off to a teammate and then made a run further up the pitch to progress the play. Um, so I wouldn't write off Brandt. I mean, I think his struggles are multifaceted, but I think that the tactical setup of what is expected of him in these various systems that Nuri Sahin is implementing, I think that's the bigger issue with Brandt's poor form right now than the fatigue from being expected to play 90 minutes every single time he's fit.
Yeah, I think the second part of, or the first part of what you just said is a big part of it, where the tactical aspects of what's being asked of him are things he's not as good at. Like I already talked about, like him receiving the ball in our own third. I think he's a player that really misses out on playing alongside guys like Rafael Guerrero and Jude Bellingham, who were much better in that like early phase build-up play. Um, but let's get into that. We've already had a long podcast. Let's move on into our star of the week. It's difficult to pick out, but I think there's two or three names if we get a little abstract that we can go with. Pedro, do you want to start us? Or let's give Joey first pick.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought with Star of the Week was not applicable, but I am gonna go with one, and that's my boy Gio Reyna, U.S. international. Came on, had a couple really nice goals. His goal against Kiel today, his perfect placement. It was the perfect combination of power and finesse, and placement. So I have to give him some credit. Really happy to see him returning to a little bit of form, and um, he he's one positive aspect of an otherwise pretty dreary day for Dortmund. That's my
Yes,
star.
certainly played his way into more minutes, and that is a way that you can look at to get Brand a bit more rest and a bit more competition and force him to raise his levels or be moved on. Because if Gio Reyna can start for the rest of the year, that would be a real difference to both the club and the player. But Pedro, who's your star of the week?
I'm gonna go simple. I'm gonna go straightforward. Jimmy Gittens. I think he's one of the main reasons why we are still alive in both of those matches in this past week and a half. And yeah, just a difference maker kind of player. And unfortunately, he's probably gonna leave sooner rather than later. Hopefully not for Bayer, but apparently they are have some interest paying 70 million in Koku from Chelsea. So hopefully that uh, ends the possibility of him going to Munich. But yeah, Jimmy Gittens for me, easy.
Yeah, would love Bayern to spend all their money buying random number 10s throughout European football instead of Jamie Gittens. But there's two places I could go, and like this isn't for the on-field performance. This is for the after-field performance with both of them. But the first one that I wanted to do uh, was kill Wyan for not getting as angry at the ultra as the ultras were, uh, for kind of watching some of the guys fail to perform for his boyhood club, because this is a guy who is a Dortmund fan through and through, and is now having to watch from the bench as guys don't fight for the badge. And he's really a guy I would like to see get some minutes, just to change things up, because from every minute we've seen him on the pitch, he's a guy that goes where he's told and does actual number 8 things and can buzz around the midfield and be a little more tactically astute. But I have to give my star of the week to a different guy for off the field reasons, and that's Nico Schlotterbeck, leading over Anton, Emre Can, and Guirassy to talk to the Ultras after the match, because they traveled a long way to see a disgraceful performance, and we need a leader. And you can be a leader without having an armband. You can be a leader without making the most money. And he's not a guy that does that at this point in time. He's very clearly earned a contract extension, and I think he will be getting one, whether or not we get Champions League football. Because if you don't re-sign Nico Schlotterbeck and don't get Champions League football, that's like, even if the club has to go into like a little bit of a overspend on the wage bill, like you can't allow him to leave, because he is the future of this team. And having that character and having that pride for the badge and for the city of Dortmund is just above and beyond some of the other players we've seen. When your captain isn't the one to lead it over, it's your third captain, who's third or fourth even. I don't know. Is it Brandt and then Koval? I don't. But regardless, this guy, true leader. Let's get into the dud of the week. And Pedro, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm gonna start also with an obvious dud. For me, Sahim is the dud of the week, man. It's just, I mean, I've been trying to not justifying his mistakes, but trying to find like a rationale behind what's going on and why he's been struggling, and which was obvious because he didn't have much experience, so he's gonna obviously learn along the way as a manager. But I mean, as I said before, not saying out, but I mean, and even though he's sacked eventually, if we lose to Frankfurt or he's sacked tomorrow, we don't know what's gonna happen. But yeah, I don't even know if that's the best solution. And even though with the other options we have on the market right now, apparently Eric Ten Hag is the closest thing we are from having a substitute in case Sahim is not the manager anymore. But it's just what we have been saying, like lack of conviction. And I think even Sahim, he was lost. And I was even discussing on Twitter and this past few days about young Koto, and people already not convinced about him. And I was just trying to talk to people and I say, guys, come down. He's super young. I know he was not signed up for this kind of system or to a back four. He was signed to the original system we were supposed to play with the
The
back three
hybrid,
that
yeah,
Sahim's.
3-4, or
Yeah, with the everything that Sahim lined up in the beginning of the season and in the preseason as well.
that's why you don't sign
But
players for coaches.
yeah, but it's not like it's not that he's to blame for the Sahim's change of heart, for him to change information and losing conviction in what he was doing. So in that sense, for that lack of conviction and just confusing tactics, man, the second half against Kiel, even though I was excited for us maybe pulling up a miracle comeback, I knew it was more accidental than intentional. So in that sense, I think Sahim is the clear loser for me this week.
Yeah, Koto had that bad back pass, I think, for the first goal against Leverkusen, but that first goal really should be stopped by Gregor Kobel. And I think it's also very harsh to kind of judge him when he's playing next to Julian Ryerson, who very clearly lacked the positional awareness and discipline of a true center back, which isn't on Julian Ryerson playing completely out of position as like what our eighth choice center back. Like I just I think that being overly critical to some of these guys is kind of ignoring the situation around them. Like I thought Kabar was terrible, but I think he showed signs to me of a potential Bundesliga player. Even though he also especially looked to me like he should stay in the youth teams for now. Um, but my dud of the week, it's Vatska. You hired a guy without his coaching badges. Um, Off the field decision making, first cousins. I don't know. Um, but you hire guys based off nepotism, based off your friends, and then you don't give them consequences. You repeatedly say that the players believe in him. The players shouldn't pick the coach because some of these guys, if there's a different coach, might be on the chopping block. And that might mean that their future earnings potential is hurt. And these guys have to look out for their families as well as uh, like they want to play, they want to perform, but they're not going to be necessarily the best guys to pick the best coach. And they're saying like, oh, we're letting him down. Like they're living with him essentially like 6, 7 days a week sometimes, and they're hearing him constantly say, "This is what he wants. Look at this on the tape. You're not doing what I want." But there's a reason they're not doing what he wants on the pitch, and it's because his instructions uh, aren't good enough, and so we're essentially allowing Shaheen to stay on for too long because of whatever reason of he knows the club, he's through the academy, like that is all true, and he has done very good things for Borussia Dortmund, but he's not doing them right now. This is the worst start since Klopp left, which is what 13 years ago. Like
Like a decade.
yeah. And before that, you're talking about the worst start since like Klopp had more in the bank, and Klopp had more in the bank before he joined the club Borussia Dortmund than Nuri Sahin does. So like Vatska, what are we doing? We're just going off your neighbor, and then we're going from your neighbor to an old friend, and then the guy who's going to pick the next coach is going to be Sammer, who's like Watzke's friend, and that's the only reason he has a role. So I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, get a footballing mind into the club,
I
and
think that
that
was
might not be Ricken, but
the
ridiculous.
2014-15 season that at the end of the Hinrunde, Dortmund was in 17th place, but you can argue that Klopp earned his leniency at that point because he had won the league with Dortmund twice. He had at least one German Cup title at that point, I think, and he had sort of solidified himself as a club legend for what he had already brought the club through. When it comes to Shaheen and yeah, surprise, surprise. Nuri Sahin is also my dud of the week. Um, it is nepotism how he got the position there in the first place, and um, I don't have any confidence in him at this point to lead this squad into Europe, and I think that the sooner that the board can recognize that, the sooner they can prepare to make a change. I'm not really of the opinion of impulsively sacking a manager unless we've got the next person lined up, unless there's a plan in place. Um, but from what we've seen, it kind of feels like we've seen enough at this point, and guys, it's time to come up with a contingency plan because as much as I like Nuri Sahin, it doesn't feel like he's going to get this. It doesn't feel like he's going to bring this club to a place where we're going to meet our minimum goals for the season, and that's qualifying for Champions League. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and on Shaheen, like between the paying the buyout clause, paying the signing on bonus, and then paying wages to Sergio Guirassy, it's an average cost over his 4-year contract of 17.45 million euros per season. Are you seeing anywhere near enough on the field for the return on investment? No. Are you seeing anywhere near enough the 9.5 million per year between fees and wages on Maxi Bayer to return on the investment? No. Are you seeing anywhere near enough from gross between widely different reported fees, but you're looking at 7 to 10 million? These are big signings. These are guys who were excellent in top four leagues last year, um, and you're not seeing that. Jan Koto, you're only paying 5.2 million this year with the loan, so it actually works out to be a much better deal because you get this year for like half of the fee that you're or half of the per year value you're paying for him over the 4 years after that, because that's assuming he's on around 5 million a year a wage. So like that's a good deal. Are you seeing him play to his quality? No. Are you seeing Brandt at the level he was last year? No. The only players who have gotten better from last year are Nico Schlotterbeck, who entered the first year of his prime, and Jamie Gittins, who entered his first year as a starter and is approaching starting his prime. Like that's the only two guys. Everyone else has gotten
Mecha
worse.
and Betsabaini have gotten better, I
Oh,
think.
well, I don't think that has Ben Sebaini gotten better. I think that he
Nah,
was
yeah, I
underrated
don't agree
last
as
year.
well.
Ben
Benzabaini,
Sebaini has returned to the form he showed for 4 or 5 years in Mönchengladbach. And Nemecha, like, as good as he had that run, he's been
He has
mediocre
reverted
since.
a
I
bit.
don't think it's necessarily his fault that he's reverted because he's the only one playing in midfield. But,
I
like,
think
he's
that
not lighting the
you
world
bring
on
up
fire.
a pretty good point there, that I want to touch on with players like Valdemar Anton, Jan Koto, Serhu Guirassy, Maxi Bayer. These are guys who came to Dortmund to advance their careers. They came to Dortmund because it's a bigger club that could compete for trophies. And so far, both Guirassy and Anton have both had better opportunities at winning silverware when they were at Stuttgart. So they came to Dortmund for bigger salaries, but those bigger salaries should also come with bigger expectations. And nobody in the squad is really meeting those expectations right now. I suppose, except for Gittins, who, to be fair, has looked pretty good. Um, but these guys have not advanced their careers from coming to Dortmund. And that's a problem too.
yeah, I agree. I guess they didn't send them the memo saying what Borussia Dortmund has become as of today, so
Yep.
not their fault.
We
Yeah,
couldn't read the future.
Yeah.
yeah. And also, like with Guirassy, like we're talking about 17.45 million a year, but like the latter 2 years, he's going to be 31, 32. So you need to be getting that excess value now. And like the same with Pascal Gross. Like these are not guys that are going to, like these contracts are going to get worse as they get older. Like this, it's a little different. Like a lot of our American listeners, in most American sports, NBA, MLB, NFL, all the media rights deals are consistently getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what that essentially does is as team revenues grow, um, the salary cap, whatever that you have in the US grows. Whereas in Europe, we've started to see TV rights deals stagnate and decrease. And you've seen in the last like 2 seasons, some of the transfer fees go down in response to that. And what that essentially does is it makes these contracts age worse because you're paying them based off the current TV rights deals. If the current TV rights deals or the TV rights deals in 2 years decrease, then all of a sudden you're then earning at an even higher percentage of what the club's like revenue is. And so you really need to be getting the most value out of these guys when they're 28, because when Guirassy is post peak at 30, 31, um, he's not going to be performing to the same level. He's going to be on the same money. He's going to be like the club's going to owe the same transfer fee, because they're probably paying it in installments or whatever. So there's just a lot of like moving pieces, a lot of money owed, and not a lot of return on investment. And one of the ways, like, it's a lot cheaper to essentially sack Shaheen and get in a new coach that can maybe get some return on these guys on the pitch, um, and work towards getting a trophy next season because we're not going to get it this year. This is a terrible team. This is even more lifeless than with Terzic last year. The underlying numbers are even worse than that, and like we
And
don't have
Terzic
it
took us
yet.
to a final.
We don't have the underlying numbers quite yet, for the first half of the season, but they're gonna be horrid because we were verging on even coming into this match, and we just got played off the park like by by Kiel. Anyway, let's get some score predictions for Our next match, which is against high-flying Eintracht Frankfurt. I watched the first half today. They were fine. I watched their last match at the weekend. They were not particularly good. They still managed to win. Dortmund could never do that. But how badly do you think this match is going to go?
Depends on if Marmoush leaves for Manchester City.
It's an away match.
There's not
Does
enough
that
time for
matter?
that, man.
It's
Unfortunately
an
for
away
us, there's
match.
not enough
Like,
time.
Yeah.
it's an away match. It's
So
over. It's over.
Frankfurt has actually struggled against Dortmund quite a bit in the past, to a point where I'd make the argument that Dortmund is a bit of a trap team for Frankfurt. That being said, this is away. Frankfurt has looked much better lately than Dortmund has. Yeah, and I already said it, but we're away. So I think we're going to see an improvement in this, but I still think it's not going to be good. I'm going to predict a 2-3 loss where we trail the majority of the game.
Yeah, I think I'm with Joe in this one, especially with the track record of Shahin this year. I mean, all the times he was on the hot seat and expected to be sacked as soon as you can see. I saw the team bounce back immediately, either just managing a win against a team we should be winning either way, or just performing a little bit better than they were performing in the previous games before. So I think we're gonna play a little bit better. Also, depending on the personnel that's gonna be available. Hopefully, Adeyemi is gonna be back. I'm not sure about the extent of his conditions right now, but I think it's gonna be a 2-1 loss in this match against Frankfurt.
I'm thinking 3-1. I'm thinking 4-2, and I'm not thinking positively. I have no hope in this. I have been given no reason to have hope.
Yeah.
Do we leave it there? That's very depressing.
I've got one
Yeah, that's
reason to
very
hope.
depressing.
I predicted a loss for the away match in Wolfsburg, and we won that. So if I'm hoping to kind of have a little reverse psychology going on there.
Hopefully, yeah.
Gonna predict the loss, so hopefully we win.
Well, that'll do it for us. Is there anything you guys already plugged BVB Buzz? So you can follow us at Dortmund Dispatch, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you guys want to plug specifically?
Specifically, you guys can follow me at @Pedro23 on Twitter. And yeah, that's it, guys. It's been quite a ride with Shahin. I'm gonna predict that if we lose against Frankfurt, and especially not improving significantly from one game to another, just starting the year with 3 straight losses in the Bundesliga, I think that's not gonna be more excuses, and I think
The
he's gonna be
reverse
sacked.
Edin Terzic.
Yes.
Could be.
Well,
I'm
Yeah.
still not convinced that Terzic won't be our manager by the end of the season.
Oh my God. God, no, please. I'm gonna pull the
what's
Michael
that
Scott
movie
card here.
quote? Like where did your failures bring you back to me? Whatever it is.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, that'll do it for us. Have a good one. Borussia Dortmund is not and will not for the foreseeable future.
We got this. We're gonna beat Frankfurt. Let's go. Think positive.
Absolutely. not.
Joey, you're not gonna plug your socials as well? Sorry.
Oh yeah, I mean you can follow me J_Lamson_Meyer on Twitter, but don't worry about me right now. Just go follow BVB Buzz and check out the
Yes.
new articles coming out right now and in the near future.
Oh my god,
Okay.
that ruined my outro
See ya.
because you forgot.